live into the chat as soon as it's ready. Just waiting for that to, all right, we are live now. So I'm gonna copy the link, drop it here. And we are about ready to get started. So my name is Yane. I am here in Lenape-Hoking territory in so-called Philadelphia. And I use she, her, us, we pronouns. And I'm excited because it's day 10 of the Black August Power Hour. So, you know, Black August is important, you know, as a time of discipline and study and reverence. And so us having this 10-day, meeting this halfway mark, doing this every day for these 10 days is really exciting. It's an exciting accomplishment. Today, we are going to have our workout led by Brother Ikemba, and we are going to have as our reader, Medusa. So we are moving the facilitation leadership around because again, those of us who worked on planning this, we were planning this for us as a community to learn and grow together, we were leading the planning. We are not leading the learning. We are all learning collaboratively, collectively, equally, as we are also teaching collaboratively, collectively, and equally. So we're going to be starting to have new people facilitating different of these roles. And today is the first day of that. So right in the halfway mark. So we're going to have Medusa read later on. So I want to introduce the people who have been planning and co-leading this, and also introduce Medusa as the person who will be reading. So I'll start with you, Raphael, as one of the co-planners and the co-leaders of this ongoing workshop.
All right, on the move, everybody. Raphael, Rochester, New York, youth advocate, educator, freedom fighter, and again, just glad to be a part of this space, celebrating, commemorating Black August, Black freedom fighting in the U.S. and across the globe.
All right, and let's have Medusa introduce yourself next.
Medusa, they, them. I'm in Pittsburgh right now. Getting ready to head back to Philly shortly here. Freedom fighter, Mary's daughter for the formerly incarcerated, Diggy Yak now collector, freeing all political prisoners.
Awesome. And so the last but not the least to introduce himself will be Brother Ikemba, and he can lead us right into the exercise mode.
All right. So I'm working with less space today, but we're gonna get it in. I'm Ikemba out of Philadelphia, community organizer, educator, and we're gonna get right into it. You know, it's 12:10, so we're gonna get this power hour started. So everybody can, you know, stand up. Give y'all a heads up. We're gonna work on some leg exercises today. I'm still feeling the crunches, but I'm not staring away from it. I'm not running from it. We're gonna do not crunches, squats. I'm still feeling it.
I knew you was gonna bring those up again, but
yeah. I'm not running from it, man. Like, yeah. So we're gonna wait for the music to cue, and then we're gonna go right into it. Mind, body, and spirit. That's what this power hour is about. Mind, body, and spirit. We work in everything.
Malcolm Garvey, Huey,
Dedicated to all
Yeah,
political
yeah.
prisoners.
life was
All
like
right,
a
so we're
movie.
going to stretch
Study
the,
Malcolm Garvey, Huey,
the arms,
Malcolm
take it right
Garvey,
off.
Huey,
It's
We're
gangsta
gonna
Malcolm
grill,
Garvey,
streets
Huey.
back, real
Life was like a movie.
Free
I
Mumia.
live, I die, I organize. Everything I do's revolutionize. I build what's good for the whole damn hood.
Switch it
Study
up.
G's like these, really think you should. I study Malcolm Garvey, Huey, Malcolm Garvey, Huey, Martha Cody with the Uzi, listening to Fela Kuti. I'm Ogun with the machete, especially if it's deli. Got the Santos for the hexy
Alright.
to protect me,
We
so
gonna do
respect
some
me. This
arm
is heavy,
circles.
legendary, revolutionary. My wifey, she resurrect me when they thought they had me buried. Took me out the cemetery, now it's family over every. Cause it's all that's necessary to avoid the commissary. I'ma live for you five, so I stop getting
Switch it.
high. If you know, then you recognize
Reverse it.
it's that black and brown pride. This the power of the mind. RBG, God divine. You can see through the lies if you could read between the lines. I live, I die, I
Alright.
organize.
So we're going to squat and hold it.
For the whole damn hood. Study
So
G's
you-
like these.
Spread your legs. Cool. Feet face outward. Go down.
Malcolm Garvey, Huey.
Malcolm Garvey, Huey, Bunchy, Bobby, packing Tukey. Sitting by the door so you can say I'm acting spooky. Just like in the movie, son, you better pack your toolie. Niggas switch be acting fruity.
Yeah,
You'll
yeah,
be cracking
yeah.
like they pookie.
Alright.
Rather smoke a doobie than be burning and eluding.
So now,
bang, pig
I'ma go
shooting.
back
We
to
should
high school
blame
with this
Rudy
one.
Julie. Yanny
So
for
we
the
gonna
camera
go
shining
down,
white and nose
touch our
candy.
toe,
Let you
go as far
banging
as
on
you
the
can to the
system.
left,
You a
go
gangster
to the
wearing
middle,
panties.
go to the right.
RBG, my family
Come on.
from the Bronx to Miami. Police cannot stand me, Pacquiao like a Manny. Call me Little Bobby Hutton, cause
Back
I'm
down.
first to push the button. Rappers don't be saying nothing to the system, we say fuck 'em. This is for the Honda, mama, see mama Akua. All the real OGs, I'm a soldier, cause you told me study Malcolm Garvey, Huey. Malcolm Garvey, Huey. Malcolm Garvey, Huey, I'm reporting in the duty.
Alright.
Sticky, icky, yours
So you
truly
can hold
here
on
for
to
duty.
something.
Don
You
Davino,
can, but we gonna stretch.
you know how we drop the jury.
Grab your,
This is real,
foot.
not a movie.
Break it up.
Mickey Donald Goofy, I'm a soldier. I avoid a bitch nigga like the cooties.
Alright, let's do the other leg real quick.
We could do this like we fam or go to war like the Apaches. For whatever, I stay ready. I learned that in Tallahassee. Baba Tunde used to school me as a juvie, skipping
All right,
classes.
we're gonna go into some jumping jacks.
My duty is my passage. Watch the homies in your army. They don't always show their badges. Keep your family living healthy. Teach your children about their blackness. Teach your wife
gonna do some
how they
jumping
use the
jacks. I'ma wait for y'all
This shit
next.
is classic. Get your food, clothes, and shelter. Fuck the system, pimp it backwards. I ain't hating. I'm just saying if you.
Can you keep the same song?
You can switch it up. Switch it up.
All right, I'm gonna put it on the screen now.
A technical approach is designed.
If
Can
you
you
put
hear
the timer
everything?
up there, you can put it on 2 minutes. I want us to go from jumping jacks and go right into jogging in place.
All right.
Yeah, halfway, peoples.
All right. Well,
I advise you not to try this.
So we're going to do jumping jacks for a minute. When it hits that minute mark, we're going to switch it up and jog in place.
all right. You see the timer?
Right on, right on. If you need to take a break, you can take a break though. I don't want to hurt nobody. All right. So let's get started.
Early in the morning when they're asleep, we are already on our way. Going for a run out in these streets helps me to keep the stress away. The rhythm of the run is my heartbeat. We run, take no runway. No better way to start my day. We run these streets.
I'm up in the morning at the break of dawn. Meditate, give thanks, throw my sneakers on. Turn on my playlist of my favorite songs. Hearing dogs bark as I cut through the neighbor's lawn. Hit the pavement, I'm feeling strong. Feel a breeze on my face, nice pace, I'm just getting warm. Each step, deep breath, open up the lungs. It ain't nothing like the feeling of a morning run. I see the work traffic, everybody's rushing. I'm in my zone with my own adrenaline rushing. Misty dewdrops on the bushes. People staring out the city bus windows, pointing and looking. They see a crazy runner, they don't know what.
Are we going to jog in place?
This is ritual for me. This is more than fitness. We all got a destination to reach. Gotta get it how you get it, but a runner, we run these streets.
Early in the morning when they're asleep, we are already on our way. Going for a run out in these streets helps me to keep the stress away.
Make sure you're monitoring your breathing.
Metaphysically, the life of a runner is a metaphor to keep going because there's more in your reservoir. If you a runner, it's just something in your inner core, something in you that make you push to the finish for. This is more than sport, this is heritage. Running back to the first couriers and messengers, indigenous warriors barefoot through the wilderness in Africa and ancient America. This is lineage, one foot in front of the other, keeping the cadence. Dirt roads, trails, and pavement. We run these streets. For me, it's priority. It's not a luxury. It's a daily part of my life. It's a necessity. Running free, I do it for fun.
All right. Y'all breaking a sweat yet? We're gonna do some kicks. Wait for the timer to get started. You can turn that music up too.
1 minute still.
1 minute. Make sure you're catching your breath. We're gonna do some kicks, so right leg, left leg, or however you want to do it. We're gonna do some kicking for a minute. Going for a run out in these streets helps me to keep the stress away. The rhythm of the run is my heartbeat. We run, ting, no runway. No better way to start my day. We run these streets. 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 We run these streets.
Feel like I'm training for the Olympics, like I'm high up in the Ethiopian hills, breathing the eucalyptus. My runs give me strength like iron does for lifters, applying the same focus to my family and my business commitments.
Y'all
Stay
done?
forward path, relentless.
Yeah, let's get 1 minute. We're gonna do some squats. How much time?
You can, I just want to know. We can do another minute.
Yeah. Let's do a minute of squats. We're gonna end it with this.
All right.
We're gonna do some squats, y'all.
The rhythm of the run is my heartbeat. We run, ting, no runway. No better way to start my day. We run these streets.
I think that runners need to do what they love. Some may like to race and train. Others love to run and look outside, see beauty. And I don't look at my watch. I just run. If I get tired, I stop. Sometimes I like to compete.
Feel the burn.
Other times I just love running.
Ooh, if you need to take a break, take a break. Or we can push ourselves. That's revolution right there. We struggle against the obstacles, right?
Absolutely.
We don't stop because it gets hard.
All right.
Revolution.
So I'm gonna let the music play while we get ourselves our 2 minute cool down.
Old broom, daily ritual, sweep the whole room, shake the mats, dust the corners, feng shui, all things in order. Keep it simple, open up a window, let the light and the fresh breeze in the temple. Morning yoga, proper posture, sun salutation, realign the chakras, deep stretching, deep breaths.
All the time, and certainly when we work out.
Stay on purpose, maintain balance. Nobody perfect, the path is the practice. Good habits, Zen focus, remain present in each moment. The yoga mat on the floor, it's more than that. It's a metaphor, a way of life amongst shores. A soldier's orders, an inner war, a living chant, a growing plant, the craft work of the Buddha's hands, the overcoming of circumstance, the ever-flowing, eternal dance, a strong spirit, a free thought, an open mind, a loving heart, approach others with compassion, A simple truth, wise actions, stay humble, continue learning. It's not the destination, it's the journey. Walk in courage, stay grounded. See all sides, be well rounded. The yoga mat on the floor, it's more than that. It's a metaphor. Don't need a lot, just enough. Do more with less, get better results. Reassess, readjust, embrace change, cause things must. It's universal in all circles and resonates in all cultures. We have vice, we have virtue, yin and yang, and vice versa. The seed that grows is the one you nurture. Each posture needs solid structure. The physical, the spiritual, the maintenance, the ritual, the meditation, the power mantra, the affirmation in the subconscious, the mastery of emotion. Like a dolphin at one with the ocean. Ride the waves and let them pass. Don't cling, be detached. The yoga mat on the floor. It's more than
We're
that.
going to jump right into it and get this reading on. And today we're going to be able to hear the voices of George Jackson and OC quotes through our major strong comrade Medusa coming through. So going to turn it over to Medusa. Just want to mention yesterday, August 9th, which was our day 9, was also both impacted Black and Gender Oppressed Day and the anniversary of the murder of our young brother, Mike Brown Jr. So just want to recognize that. And now want to turn this over to Medusa. We are on page, is this right? We're on page 84?
It's not 73.
I think we
It's 84.
started
Yeah, the first paragraph on page 84.
the
84.
power
Okay.
of our military, right? I think we started
Yeah.
on 73 yesterday. That might be what.
Oh, okay, okay.
All right, so turning it over to you.
Right. Community or class consciousness can possibly be won over or at least rendered neutral. Either way, they won't be able to break strikes with the power lines down. The power of our military strategy sitting beside our political
I
infrastructure
think that's
depends.
the wrong page, Medusa.
It's at 84.
Yeah, 84 in the book. So on your PDF, you're looking at it on a PDF. It may be a different page on the PDF.
It's the right
Bottom of
page.
the pages
I think
on
it's
the,
the right page.
on the
It's-
document in the PDF, and I'll pull it up to see if I can find it more easily. The location.
It's
more
3
easily.
pages before the end of the chapter, if that helps.
They just
Um,
a couple sentences early. It's the right page.
It's the
Oh, it
right
is?
page. It's just a few sentences early. So it's the right page.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Sorry.
Oh, we good then?
Oh,
My
Okay.
bad. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Medusa.
Okay. The power of our military strategy, is that where everyone is?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
The power of our military strategy sitting beside our political infrastructure depends on constant attack, attack, attack. Improvisation, aggression, an attack on property, the utilities that feed the superstate, indirect and direct attacks at the productive point and distribution system. As I stated, the Western military experts admit that the mechanized establishment guard must outnumber the attacking worker by 10 to 1. What they cannot afford to admit is that even with this numerical superiority, they cannot win. They're learning this in every theater of combat, in a class war. They could never even raise a 10 to 1 numerical superiority, even if they succeed in employing the degenerate elements of lower class created by a long history of counter-positive mobilization of reactionary mass society. As mercenaries or vigilantes in the early stages, the advantage is still ours. At 10 to 1, we still enjoy a strategic military superiority if we are attacking, because they must defend so many different points, vital to the order and continuity of their life support system. All at the same time, the points to be protected will always outnumber the units who are available to protect them. The super technological city-state has grown so complex that it's completely dependent upon the 1,000 related parts. It has grown so large that no force can be fielded to protect all of its vital parts. The essence of the guerrilla technique is to cripple and finally stop the life support system of the enemy class or state. The advantage of the anti-establishment force can be best understood by picturing the need for the establishment forces to spread themselves thin, in the vain attempt to protect the mechanical base of their source of power, which of course works out to be the various forms of productive and non-productive property. The mobile have not. The attacker can concentrate his forces even though initially they are numerically inferior. To actually outnumber and overwhelm the thinned out forces of the establishment by attacking at 1 or 2 points at a time. It's Mayo Selected Works, Volume 2. He speaks of ingenuity and mobility as necessary qualities of the guerrilla operation. The ancients said ingenuity in varying tactics depends on mother, wit. This ingenuity, which is what we mean by flexibility, is the contribution of the intelligent commander. Flexibility does not mean recklessness. Recklessness must be rejected. Flexibility consists in the intelligent commander's ability to take timely and appropriate measures on the basis of objective conditions after judging the hour and sizing up the situation. The situation includes the enemy situation, our situation, and the terrain. And this flexibility is ingenuity in the varying tactics. On the basis of ingenuity, we can win more victories in quick decision offensive warfare on exterior lines, change the balance of forces in our favor, gain the initiative over the enemy, and overwhelm and crush him so that the final victory will be ours. If there are 20 points in the city-state to be protected and 10 units of protection, clearly an attacking force of 1 could destroy 10 of the 20 points without opposition. The 10 points that remain are guarded by the 10 units of protection, must now meet the attacker on a 1-to-1 basis. The term attack explicitly means first strike. The first strike translates into advantage. Total repression and genocide are not possible if we organize ourselves for survival first. If we construct the commune, a sense of community, a common interest of class, the objective conditions are present. To postpone our liberation with the excuse that the people aren't ready is to underestimate them. In effect, it is the saying they don't have the mentality to act in their defense. The repeating shotgun is the deadliest weapon in the world for close range urban fighting. They are simple to make, maintain, and use. Anyone can be effective with the scattergun. One simply points and squeezes the trigger. If the thing to be shot is moving, follow through with your swing. Tanks are obsolete. They can be rendered harmless with $1 worth of grenade, propelled from the muzzle of the shotgun by a blank cartridge. Then as a tank moves down any city street, it has placed itself in a defile. On a cost-effective basis, the most destructive weapon is the gasoline bomb. Enough gasoline, soap shavings, and potassium chlorate could flip a tank over on its side or thrown from the windows of our defiles. The gasoline bomb could incinerate the largest army. We can only be repressed if we stop thinking and stop fighting. People who refuse to stop fighting can never be repressed. They either win or they die, which is more attractive than losing and dying. The primary of politics remains, but we must now prepare for armed confrontation. By no stretch of the imagination can we hope to overthrow so determined an enemy without force. We will win. The American mind. Frankenstein's need for a servant was an expression of his diseased ego. So he created a demented, ugly creature, pathologically strong and huge. Dear Greg, the breakdown of the establishment conditioning usually occurs first at the university level. Students refuse to accept the lie that our exploitation of the world's people is actually beneficial to them. They begin to refuse their share of the spoils. Huey Newton and Bobby Seale left the campus to form the Black Panther Party. The Students for a Democratic Society gave birth to the Weathermen. The rise of socio-political institutions to their present form and complexity was not the result of chance. The corporation, the university, the unions, the mass media, the foundations, the associations, the courts, the prisons, the army, police, national and international, uniformed and disguised. From their beginnings, we were formulated and enforcers of state centralism. An examination focused on the history of all major socio-political institutions of the United States. A study of the genetics of hierarchy would certainly uncover the totally economic motive underlying the foundation of these institutions. For my purpose, I would broadly divide the major socio-political institutions into 2 classes. One designed by the state to move people into certain actions, and the other is to discourage, curtail, or completely deny certain other actions. The unintelligible vastness of this institution makes it seem impossible that they could be owned and operated by a relatively small number of men. But the truth of this can be demonstrated by the documented evidence and the irrefutable case studies. The modern industrial cooperative city-based state could never function at all without hierarchical controls and an acceptance of the people of the controlling hierarchy. Prior conditioning, of course, the effects of ambiguous self-negation inbred since childhood. Of course, again, certainly the pervasive nihilism of capitalism, man, but these are simply effects. Western civilization is dying because it's tied into an economic system that was decadent 100 years ago. The system was certainly the calculated creation of a specific minority class. The rise of manufacturing class was not spontaneous. It is perpetuated beyond the stage of decadence in spite of its outrageous disorder. Its seemingly remarkable ability to return from crisis is not proof of natural durability. Rather, it is proof of a destructive will to power at any cost. Frankenstein's need for a servant was an expression of his diseased ego. So he created a huge, pathologically strong, demented, ugly creature. He censored the beast's activity by making him unintelligent. He erected institutions flexible enough to keep the giant working, but rigid enough to forestall any growth of his mental faculties. A brain was grudgingly attached to the beast to provide a way for it to act. The beast worked and fought the enemies of its creator. The beast was content to watch the creator flourish. He lived through his creator, and when he finally saw himself as he was, he went mad. The corporation, the foundation, the association, the mass media, the state-controlled unions, the university, the primary schools are all designed to move people into a very specific pre-ordered and monitored actions. The actual monitoring is done by a broader segment of the stratified slave state, but the pre-ordering is done by 1/10 of 1%, the ruling class, and the governing elite of the cooperative arrangement. The careful observer can see immediately how the guiding instructions are held together by red tape and rubber bands so that they can be flexible when necessary. The corporation's flea market and the mass media are relatively new techniques of control, as are the institution foundations and most of the associations. Foundations, whether family or corporate, are tax-exempt financial mechanisms ostensibly established for altruistic influences in the fields of art and culture. Generally, they subsidize scientific research, higher education, educational TV, etc. The Rockefellers alone control 13 such foundations, through which they also control the oil holdings of 90 to 100 nations in the third world countries mainly, holding variously estimated in value from 10 to $14 billion. Similar foundations are controlled by the Fords, Kellogg's, and the Carnegies. When the international business interests of these families' financial institutions are threatened, the tax-supported international police are activated. After the CIA fails, the special forces are called upon. When necessary, the Marine Corps and infantry intervene. American justice, for their freedom to prey on the world's people, whatever the cost in blood. Dear Greg, in order for capitalism to continue to rule, any action that threatens the light of a few individuals to own and control public property must be prohibited and curtailed. Whatever the cost and resources, the international wing of the repressive institutions have spent $1.5 trillion since World War II. Whatever the cost in blood, Miley, Augusta, Georgia, Kent State, the Panther trials, the frame up of Angela Davis, the national repressive institutions, police, National Guard, Army, etc., are no less determined. The mayor that cursed the rioters and the looters, Mayor Daley of Chicago, has ordered them summarily executed in the streets. Ignore the fact that their bosses have looted the world. I refuse to make any argument with statistics compiled by the institutions and associations that I indict. Yet it is true that even official figures prove the case against capitalism. The Federal Bureau of Investigation compiles and indexes almost all information on crime in the United States. I have the figures as it states them right here. Vital statistics, FBI, crime report, property crimes, 87% of the total in 1969, 28% of these crimes occurring in the ghetto. Since 1960, the number of men and women prisoners in state and federal penitentiaries has fluctuated slightly around the 250,000 mark. These statistics conceal the living reality. This is my 11th year of being shoveled into every major prison in the most populous state in the nation and the largest prison system in the world. What I have seen is these 11 years is the living situation. The experience is quite different from the columns of figures neatly arranged to give the impression of well-studied, detached, scientific, and calculated analysis. Hidden are the facts that at each institution I've been in, 30 to sometimes 40% of those held are Black. And every one of the many thousands I've encountered was from the working or lumpen proletariat class. There may be a few exceptions, but I simply have not met any of them in my 11 years, where I was confined now in San Quentin Prison, California, awaiting trial for 2 alleged crimes, conviction on either of which would subject my lungs to the poison gas treatment. There are 17 cells in what euphemistically called the adjustment center, but is far more accurately known as the Hull, the AC in San Quentin, triple maximum security. And all of these cells are filled, 11 of them with Black men, every one of them without exception from the working class. I've been arrested, interrogated, or investigated more times than I can count. I've learned 10 times more about the process than the most expert single groups of inquisitors. From the first moment I'm brought into this scenario, I attempt to establish control over the exchanges that will take place between myself and my captors. Depending on the situation, one learns to feign either indignation, surprise, idiocy, or fear. Yeah, y'all want me to keep going?
I think you can read this one more page. That would really be 10 pages with all the separation.
Awesome. At times, the peasant philosopher will face work. The peasant philosopher will work. Oh, the peasant philosopher face will work. I don't think I'm an exception at all, as most Blacks learn by age 15 how to handle the cretins who hire out as guns for privilege. There's only one type of inquisitional situation that I personally cannot control: the sessions that begin with violence. In those cases, guile fails and Blacks learn to fight multiple opponents while handcuffed, or at least learn how to protect the groin area. I simply have never managed to develop a technique against 9 armed men who are fascinated with damaging my private parts, but I'm still learning. All Black people, wherever they are, whatever their crimes, even crimes against other Blacks, are political prisoners, because the system has dealt with them differently than with whites. Whitey gets the benefit of every law, every loophole, and the benefit of being judged by his peers. Other white people, Blacks don't get the benefit of any such jury trial by peers. Such a trial is almost a cinch to result in the conviction of a Black person, and it's conscious political decision that Blacks don't have those benefits. Howard Moore Jr., attorney official of the court, but not for the court. He's in a position to know. He's honest, Black, and dedicated enough to tell. The purpose of the chief representative institutions within the totalitarian capitalist state is clearly to discourage and prohibit certain activity, and the prohibitions are aimed at very distinctly defined sectors of the class and race-sensitized society. The ultimate expression of law is not order, it's prison. There are hundreds upon hundreds of prisons and thousands upon thousands of laws, yet there is no social order, no social peace. So I'm stopping right at the top of 100.
Did you finish the paragraph?
Oh, you want, okay, yep. Anglo-Saxon bourgeoisie law is tied firmly into economics. One can even think that out of those vital statistics, bourgeoisie law protects property relations and not social relationships. The cultural traits of capitalism society that also tend to check activity, individualism, artificial politeness, juxtaposed to an aloof rudeness, the rush to learn how to instead of what it is, are secondary, really, and intended for those mild cases in groups that require preventive measures only. The law and everything that interlocks with it was constructed for poor, desperate people like me.
Thank you so much, Medusa. I really enjoyed this read. We went over a couple of different subject matters through a few different letters. And so in our first 10 days, because the letter was so long, we were in like immersed in one subject matter. But Medusa, thank you so much for your great read. Today, we were able to actually be immersed in not only the finishing of that previous subject matter or particular focus of that first letter, but also to be able to look at some aspects of a couple of other subjects. And so I would like to first just see if we wanted to talk a little bit about the first one as it relates to the first new one, that short letter that we read, as it relates to the ways that the institution has intentionally put things, created a pre-created order. We kind of talked about this a little bit in some of our previous conversations, but I'm wondering if anybody has any thoughts about that, in particular about the ways that these institutions are created actually by the ruling class for control. I see Emily's hand is up. So go ahead, Emily.
I really appreciated the Frankenstein analogy. And as someone who studied education, it just made me think of the ways that education, public education in this country, I would say since the backlash against the Reconstruction, has been designed to produce obedient, compliant workers that don't question. And it feeds them into all the other institutions, right? So I just really appreciated that Frankenstein analogy because it's so fitting. And the education system is, I would say, the main mechanism of control that prevents people from actually developing a critical consciousness.
Thank you, Emily. I agree that it's certainly one of them. I definitely also agree. As George mentioned, the media is another, and at that time he was suggesting that it was a relatively newer, but we've seen how the media is a full-fledged device of control, going back to what George said earlier about the fact that people are either being taught what to think or how to think. And so you had, like in that instance, he was talking about the leader Blacks, those who are established or put in place by the system, telling people what to think instead of operating as the vanguard should, and telling people how to think. And the media is definitely a resource for that. And we talked yesterday also about the ways that the two parties, I think that was just yesterday, but the ways that these different parties are also used in that way in order to control large groups of the masses. And that the idea is to create a lot of predictability for large groups of people, so that then those who are not able to be so easily predicted, or who can't be directed in very particular ways, can be the minimal targets, or targets that are not as massive, and the system can just go and focus on them because they have control through these different systems, these different institutions, the electoral systems and the educational systems and all of that, of large masses and large groups of people. Does anybody else have any commentary about this part of any parts? We could talk about any parts, but I did want to just acknowledge that there are a couple of subjects that were tapped into. So are there any others who had some thoughts that they wanted to speak to? Jacqueline, or did you raise your hand? And so I have a stack with Jacqueline, and then Agape Movement. I don't know if you want to maybe change your name so that we can refer to you in a more personal way. But if not, that's okay. We'll just continue to call you Agape. But Jacqueline and then Agape on staff.
Okay, Agape. I was part of the educational system, and be sure the person who spoke before me, as a teacher, we were all very much aware of the system. You have to understand that. Okay, there were some of us who were very outspoken, like myself, and there were those who were frightened. Okay, so I don't think that what I often hear is that people blame the teachers. No, we are intelligent thinking beings, and We know exactly what's going on, what the fear is, a fear for our jobs, our livelihoods, attack on our families, and so on and so forth. Okay, in New York, they have what they call as the rubber room. A bunch of people got put into that, were in courts for years, and a whole lot of nonsense happens to you. Okay, so it's much more complicated than that, but it is about the controlling factors who are the superintendents and above, and principals, who put that hardship on the teachers, and it filters down to the students. Okay, I just want to make that clear.
Thanks for that. I think that most of us here probably understand that it is not the teachers. The teachers, for the most part, are often the protectors and and are so key as it relates to building relationships with our community. But there's a system, and the system is bigger than each individual teacher. And I remember when they created the Leave No Child Behind, that they actually took so much power and authority and autonomy away from the teachers by creating this universal curriculum that required that everyone was teaching the same things at the same time, and you couldn't use the examples of the current day. You couldn't use the benefits and the strengths of the teachers. It really tried to turn teachers into robots, and that's because the power of the teachers as individuals was undermining the goals of the system. And so we recognize that the teachers are not the same individuals as the systems, and people go into education primarily because they love children and they understand the importance of the development of our children. So I don't think, not to speak for Emily, but I don't think that at all is an indictment of teachers, but instead of the system of education that is imposed upon us that undermines the teachers and all of the adults in our community's efforts to properly develop our young people. So now we have Mel and then Medusa on stack. So go ahead, Mel.
Good morning, y'all. Sorry about that. I'm on my phone. Oh, thank you for changing my name for me.
No problem.
Hi, y'all. I just really appreciate holding the space and wanted to share one of my reflections on George Jackson is just how I appreciate how he talks about the masses. I think a lot of times when folks start thinking about this work and what goes into it, there's a really defeatist viewpoint that comes into it, and understanding that the imperialist machine has hella resources, hella military, all this stuff that we're working against. And so I appreciated how he started the letter, just kind of breaking down how we outnumber folks, right? And that the masses, the proletariat coming together is what's going to lead to our liberation. And I just appreciate how he always kind of brings us back to that, at the end of the day, who's going to win is the people.
Thank you, Mel. Appreciate your comments. Medusa?
Yeah. So peace again. So I have two things. One, I want to go back to the teacher conversation. What is that song? I think Erykah Badu got. What if there was no niggas only? So y'all know it. What if it was no niggas only? Righteous teachers, some teachers. It's what if there was no, anyway. But the point that I'm making is that everyone is a teacher in the community. It's a village. And so it is absolutely the teacher's responsibility to not conspire against our children with this curriculum that is defeating them. You're not preparing them for the world in the least. And so it is your duty, and maybe your job might be in jeopardy, but when we say we are dedicated to educating our youth, especially our Black youth who are, especially you talking about the public school system, they're not teaching us anything that's going to heal us, build us, make us better, stronger. So as a Black teacher specifically, which there's not a lot of us, right? There's not a lot of Black educators. There's not a lot of Black educators, but in it being Black educators, you know what I'm saying? It is our duty to fight for our people, our freedom, all that shit. So you do, master teacher, thank you so much. We all are master teachers. We all have a duty to be a master teacher, especially as Black people. And if we're taking a job in the public school system and understand that we have to teach a curriculum that is against our beliefs, is against our spiritual alignment, then it is our duty to use that position and leverage it for power. Like we have to leverage it for power. I don't care that, you know, this is not just your livelihood, this is our livelihood. Because if we continue to perpetuate their lies and systemically destroy our people, it's coming from our hands. It's coming from our hands for me, like to me, in my opinion. And then secondly, I really like the example of it being like 20 different points, like 20 different points, but they only command 10 at a time. And like what that looks like, what that timing, what that strategy looks like. So thank you.
Thank you, Medusa. And, you know, and certainly that's the point, like it's the system that is created, but we have teachers who, you know, and we have Ishmael Jimenez as an example here in Philadelphia, who is constantly, you know, engaging and modeling publicly as well, the ways that he teaches his young people the truth, and that they can go into his classroom and they know here is where we've learned the truth, even if they hadn't been taught it within the other in other of the classrooms. And so the teachers are able to make use of that opportunity in order to take the truth into the classroom and override the curriculum. And at the same time, we still need to recognize that there's a system of education that is not built for us, and that we have to take over the control of the development of our young people. And we have to support our educators so that they are empowered to do that as well. Our educators need to be modeling the way Ish does. He models it by posting on Facebook, talking about what he does, talking about the commentary from his students. All of those things are really important ways that we can be transformative, but the teachers, therefore, inside of there kind of like can be infiltrators, as George was talking about before. Inside of this educational system that is not built for us, we have our people who are able to be infiltrators and to make sure that our children are taught how to think and not told what to think, and not left out of that process. Go ahead, John.
Yeah. Thank y'all for all that. And I think another thing to add, like with that thought, is like for as much like infiltrating and organizing, like, you know, within we're doing, like we gotta like also be building our own and like doing our own thing, like without the system. I think like something in one of Jalil Montakim's books, We Are Our Own Liberators. I think the phrase like liberation school comes up like maybe 100 times, like, and he's always talking about like your curriculum, each one teach one. But then like, you know, a really big point is like, don't keep that only within the liberation school. Like you should like be doing it all your space. So like doubling down on the, like, even if like sometimes you have to like jeopardize like stability and such, just to like be sure you're like broadcasting like these messages of liberation and such. But like, yeah, and I think it, like developing like a curriculum to teach, I think is such a like interesting thing to just like be like, you know, how am I going to teach folks from like day one to teach them that they can be their own liberators, to teach them that we can like win this fight and all that. Yeah.
Thanks, John. I really appreciate all of you and, you know, engaging in the conversation. It's great to hear the voices of more of our comrades in this conversation. It is 12:55, so just want to mention that shortly we will be at the top of the hour. We may continue if the discussion warrants it, but we want to always make sure that we recognize that this is a power hour from 12 to 1. And so if a person leaves at 1 o'clock, that they have, you know, stayed within the construct of this moment. Raphael?
Yeah, I just want to make a connection to what everybody's saying. I was really blown away again when George talked about a few men or families or a few people just controlling, owning everything. And we could make that connection to educational systems. And the reason I think this becomes so problematic, because I think we look at some of the examples like Emily mentioned in the chat, achievement tests, and you mentioned No Child Left Behind. We realize that these have nothing to do with educating our youth and creating a different world, but has everything to do with, as George would say, corporate fascism. So I think as we think about, are we existing, say, in an educational space or workspace where a few people are dictating what we're teaching and what people are learning? And this is where we go back to the people power in our labor. What can we begin to do to organize ourselves to change that predicament? Because I think it's one of those things where we say these few people are controlling everything and they don't care about our youth or they don't care about us, but everybody who's being controlled, we care about ourselves, our youth, and everything else, e.g. teachers. Then I think it's up to us to begin to try to help organize those teachers to take that power back. And I think it's possible.
Thanks, Raphael. And I wanted to, I see that Emily and then Jacqueline are on Stack. Medusa, were you looking to add it to Stack as well?
No, I was just saying I shade what Raphael was saying.
Oh, okay, yeah. So we have Emily and then Jacqueline on Stack. Emily, I wanted to ask if you mentioned that Thorndike was a eugenicist. So if you might want to also include in your comments just an explanation of that in case anyone who's watching is not familiar with that as well. Oh, and Suzanne, is your hand raised? Okay, so we have Emily and then Jacqueline and then Suzanne on Stack. And I just want to mention unschooling too. Just unschooling is a radical way to step around the educational system that a lot of people aren't aware of, the difference between unschooling and homeschooling, not using the system's curriculum to educate your child at home, but to completely step outside of that. But go ahead, Emily, Jacqueline, Suzanne.
And I want to learn more about unschooling. I just have to finish this PhD. So I guess a little background on the public education system, because like during the Black Reconstruction, there were amazing advances done in education, but that white backlash to the Reconstruction was kind of one of the leading figures was Horace Mann, and he argued that now that more people are allowed to vote, we have to teach them how to vote properly. And so it was always a system of control, whereas like the working men's parties were trying to use education as empowerment, but they're not the ones that won out. But during that time, it was in the early 1900s, I want to say between like 1910 and 1920, Thorndike created the achievement tests. And around that time, eugenics was developing and growing in power in the United States. And so I just think that the achievement test, it doesn't study learning. It doesn't measure learning, I guess. It's more of like a mechanism of control to like sort students. So I guess that's the point that I was making about I guess about Thorndike and the achievement test. Yeah, does that clarify what I was saying about that? I don't know.
It does. This also though, like just for in case somebody doesn't know what eugenics is.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Eugenics is actually the precursor to Nazi ideology that like wanted to breed the master race. And it was really popular in the United States. And it started with trying to sterilize epileptics, but it also took on that racial quality. And in fact, Hitler got his ideas for the Holocaust on like the eugenics movement in the United States and the United States government treatment of indigenous people. Does that define eugenics kind of?
Yeah, trying to make people to build a better race, like with the traits that were considered the best traits or desirable traits to create a better human. I think it's just important when you say that he was a eugenicist and he was the one who helped create these achievement tests, that to people to understand what that means, like that context of him being a eugenicist is really important. But please go make the other point that you were going to make, and thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to build off of what Raphael was saying. The teachers and their resistance to like these achievement tests and like opting out of these standardized tests really give me power. And I think we saw a lot of the power of teachers in 2018, when a lot of the strikes for education were happening. And again, during the pandemic, the teachers are the ones that like took the lead and are asserting what needs to happen for students and their safety. And they've taken on these power structures. at a really difficult time, but it's in like teachers organizing and that mobilizing that really gives me hope, along with like a lot of workers organizing as well. But I think that like the teachers coming together is really powerful, because you also see them coming together across political lines as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Jacqueline.
What I want to add was, not everybody will put their child in a liberation school. Not everywhere there is a liberation school. And yes, you can form a liberation school. But what I learned from the Chinese was that they may send their children to public school, but they had Chinese school in the evening and they had Chinese school in the weekend. So it was part of just maintaining who they were, their culture, their dignity, and a whole lot of other things that happen to them when they come here. I don't know if there are programs like that set up in various cities throughout the United States. I do know that one of the schools that I taught at, one of the principals had developed a liberation school, and it was very powerful what he had done. And of course, they took him down. He ended up on the front of the New York Times, accused of all racist, horrible things. He had been principal of a year. So it's like I began to see, and it wasn't fear for me or anything like that, because anyone he brought in got brought down also. But I saw how they systematically destroyed this man. He never was destroyed, but how they attempted to destroy him. Okay, other thing is this. I look at what happened with the Aborigines or First Nation people in Australia when they basically tried to put them in boarding schools. Same thing with Native Americans. They weren't really schools. Okay, they were really places where they were trying to destroy their culture. The child didn't submit, then they basically died. Okay, whether emotionally, physically, or however else. It's what I'm saying is that we have to take responsibility for our children and where we want to go with our future. If you know that you are in the belly of the beast and the beast doesn't want you, wants to destroy you, then you have to protect what's yours. Okay. Some people agree on homeschooling, some people don't. I say, just take responsibility, whatever level you can, just take responsibility, because the children are the future. And if you don't guide them, and if you don't train them that they have all these possibilities within them, and that the system was never designed to make them think, okay, then they're going to be trapped, and they're not going to understand why they are trapped. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you for that, Jacqueline. And you reminded me that language, and you're talking about the schools the resident schools that they took, Indigenous people and put them in. It was all about programming, and that's really what the schools are, and that's what George was talking about when he says that they teach people what to think instead of how to think. When you're taught what to think, you are being programmed. And that's what these educational institutions are. They are institutions of programming that you can go to jail for not putting your children through, right? So, that's a really appreciate that, that additional framing that you offer, Jacqueline. Suzanne? Did you want to finish the point that you were making?
Yeah, one more thing I forgot to mention. This is really important. I'm finishing my second master's, and one of the individuals who I have been researching, filming, so on, they are the 1%. Okay, I got a chance. I really hate to say this. I got a chance to listen to them, explore them, but they are truly the 1%. And what I have learned is that the wealth is they pass it down generational. They teach each other how to do things. They develop schools. Okay, they literally developed schools where they had the very poor Polish people, because they weren't going to deal with Black people, and it was just, everything was systematically planned. You have to understand this. Everything is systematically planned. And once you understand that you have never been in the picture of these people, you have to fight back. You really do. And you have to take economic control, and you have to have systems in place for yourself and your people.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what George was talking about in the book, that from the beginning, these institutions were created in order to create the world that we are living in for the benefit as part of a larger master plan. Go ahead, Suzanne. You're muted, Suzanne. You're still muted. I just hit I just requested you unmute. Maybe something will pop up.
Should be unmuted now, right? You can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, so I've worked in the field of education most of my adult life, and actually got a PhD at the school that Thorndike, that you just mentioned, was the pioneer. He set up the program, the academic program there. I got my degree in psychology, so he was an educational psychologist. And that school was so, I mean, I had to fight very hard to stay in there and get that piece of paper that I wanted, because it was a combination of mindlessness and absolutely reactionary ideology and very, very test oriented. So, but what strikes me and has always struck me about the education system is how the multidimensional aspect, the reactionary aspects are in every corner of education. So for example, somebody I knew, a very gifted artist, a Black sister who had accomplished a lot, but was trying to get a degree in college in dance, majoring in dance. Well, her definition of dance, which was a lot of it rooted in African dance, was consistently rejected, and she was punished. I mean, punished not openly, but given low grades because she was not defining dance the way the department defined dance. My granddaughter, when she was in first grade, the teacher once said, you know, who built the White House? And the right answer was George Washington. And somebody said George Washington. She raised a hand, you know, furiously and said, no, not George Washington. The teacher said, who? His slaves. The slaves built the White House. The teacher argued with her and finally sent her to the principal's office. And I'm not exaggerating, for basically putting her in detention for having given, quotes, the wrong answer. And recently, I think it was in Texas, but I'm not sure, somebody asked the school board that was opposing critical race theory, what kind of how would you teach a particular lesson in social studies? And they had a textbook that, I swear, talked about how hard it was for the white people who lost their slaves and how they got poor and suffered so much. And it was a whole thing about identifying with the oppressor. So, I mean, I can give example after example of the many, many corners in which it starts. So to fight it requires such a multifaceted strategy. It really requires paying attention to all aspects of it. And no one, the fact that teachers are speaking up now and have risen up is wonderful. It's definitely a progressive step. But no matter what, you got to look at the curriculum at the graduate schools, at so many aspects. And it is definitely controls the minds of both the students and those who have to teach that, who many of them, or most of them even, do buy into it. So I just wanted to, I don't mean to sound that depressing. I mean to make it sound like there's really a huge job in education. Huge, huge, huge.
Yeah, thank you, Suzanne, for those examples. You know, and there are so many that we will be able to go over, of course. And so I think that the primary point, though, that we're making here is that, you know, we cannot depend on this system deprogram us. We have to recognize that this is a system that does program us, that seeks to program as many of us as possible. And even when you look at different ways that people manifest, that people present, people have, when we have people who have, who maybe are quote unquote on the spectrum, and like the way that we see that and perceive that as like a handicap or a negative, as opposed to understanding that they are the way they're supposed to be, because they have very specific gifts and talents and perceptions and perspectives that contribute to our humanity in a ways that others among us would not be able to. The way that we identify, then think about people who we create like this idea of mental illnesses, where many of these people in other kinds of cultures and communities would be recognized as people who are bringing a specific set of gifts to the community, not that they are broken, but that they are specifically themselves, specifically a part of our community that brings specific gifts and resources and talents and skills and perspectives and perceptions to our community, but they don't have the ability to fit into the very specific cogs that are built to run the system. So they are identified as problems, identified as broken, when they are actually perfect as their perfect selves as much as any of the rest of us are. And that's just like some certain examples that everyone is geared. If how well you do, and if you get those good marks, then that's a sign to the system that you will be a good candidate to perform the roles that the system needs people to fill. And if you don't get those good marks, then you can be targeted to be warehoused, because you're not going to be able to actually fulfill the roles that the system needs the people to fulfill. And that also reinforces what George is talking about as it relates to the fact that this system needs people in order to run. It can't run without the people. So it's working constantly to identify which people it is that can perform the roles that are needed, and then uses them to control the others who are either unwilling to, or who have, in spite of them trying to teach them what to think, have actually learned how to think and are using their ability and capacity to think in order to establish a liberations technology state. So it is 1:14 now. We've gone a little over. So I think that, we should wrap up. I see, Jacqueline, that you have your hand up, so I want to give you that space. Want to also just recognize that we did talk a lot more about this one particular subject. We didn't talk as much, but there's more to read tomorrow on the on some of the other aspects around like the different ways that we can overwhelm the system, and all of that. But we do need to start to wrap up. So Jacqueline, if you want to make one last point, and then we'll just have some closing remarks. Peace, John. What did you want to say,
Okay.
Jacqueline?
I'll be very brief. I want to just be upfront with everybody. You are being watched. And when I mean watched, my husband had 3 sons. And what I'll say is this. The system sees intelligence, super intelligence. And my husband's oldest son was extremely bright, to the point where I believe they skipped him 2 or 3 grades. That's how bright he was. You have to understand this. And my husband was an average man from the Caribbean. They were very protective of their children, but was told basically, first one-on-one, then the Department of Education came to him and said, either you put this child at a higher level or we take the child. Okay, so what I say is, whether you know it or not, your family, everybody is being watched. If there are certain entities, certain people that show extra intelligence, they want that. They want to be able to mold it, shape it, whatever. Okay, and that's all I have to say. This system is very powerful.
Thank you. But its power is its people. And so we are actually the powerful ones. And we can drain the system of its power by simply refusing to continue to participate in building an alternative. So let's also remember that. We also always have to remember that we really are the power. We are the fuel for the system, and we can fuel what we want. We don't have to fuel this thing that is not beneficial to us. We can fuel that which we want and desire, that which we envision for our future. So I want to just see if Ikemba, Raphael, if you wanted to offer some final words. Ikemba, you didn't speak much during this, which I know part of that is because I'm not going to say I know, it's not like you told me, but I'm thinking that part of that is because there were so many of the voices of our other participants, of our co-participants, that you wanted to make room for that. But I want to give you a little extra room if you wanted to say anything as one of the co-planners and co-leaders of this session. And then Raphael, if you have any final remarks, then we'll close. Kimba?
Hey, yeah, I mean, y'all was touching on actually like a topic that that really, I was thinking, I was putting some thought into before y'all started discussing. So I think y'all covered a lot. I'm not going to add much. I would just say that with George Jackson is talking about this military struggle, I was thinking like, we need, like, what if we take that and talk about this, like this psychological struggle, like a book that's, developing strategies for that, like that's because that's the other part of the revolution right there. Because that's the war, it's a war of the mind. So I would like us to like really develop that strategy as a people, as revolutionaries, is like this struggle, social media, the struggle in the media in general, and the schools and education that y'all was talking about. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Kimba. That's awesome. That's an awesome suggestion, idea, that we have to think more through and not just leave it in the world of ideas, list of ideas, but manifest. Raphael?
Yeah, I wanted to just echo a lot of what people was talking about in regards to education. Even as an educator, I consider myself a critical one. And one thing I realize is that, just like they say in Revolution, you become a doomed person when you're in the system trying to be critical. And for example, when we did the emergency session of Free Mumia in the spring, and I invited my class and students, again, there was perhaps not all the students, but somebody reported that back to my dean, despite the connection made between the impact of incarceration on the family dynamic and et cetera. And they were able even to hear Mumia's wife's voice during that session. But again, even when you decide, no, I'm going to be critical, I'm going to make sure my students are informed, educated about important topics, you must accept that you are a doomed person, bottom line. So I just wanted to make sure to shout out.
Thank you, Raphael, for that insight, and also for taking that step and inviting your students in spite of the potential backlash that you could have gotten, and whatever backlash that you did get, which I imagine there must have been some, being as there was a report and you learned about that being reported to your dean. I imagine that there must have been more that came of that. And so thank you for taking that risk and for making that step in spite of that. So I just want to let us leave it there. This is a really, really great and rewarding discussion. Always happy to hear the voices of so many of the participants here. Looking forward to tomorrow, same time, same station. If you're able to come and join us at like 5 or 10 minutes earlier so that we can start the live right at 12 instead of starting a little bit afterwards, that would be awesome. Let's go. See y'all mañana. Have a great day.